the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Jamaica. Good afternoon, members of the media and all listeners. I want to begin by expressing my profound, heartfelt condolences to the families and friends of those who have lost their lives in this tragic hurricane or its aftermath. Our sympathies also extend very profoundly to those thousands, tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of Jamaicans who are suffering at this time from the impact, the calamitous impact that this hurricane has had. And we are aware, of course, that there are levels of destruction. There's a large ground zero, as it's called, which is really the areas of Jamaica that were in the swathe of the hurricane when the eye hit in eastern Westmoreland, stretching into St. Elizabeth, stretching into the more westerly parts of Westmoreland as well, and then moving north into South St. James, parts of Hanover, and of course Trelawney and even St. Anne. The rest of Jamaica has also suffered damage, some of it before the hit of the hurricane. And so we can't leave them out, because there are communities all over the island where people are in a very difficult situation, whether it be due to no access with roads being blocked or breakaways, landslides, and so on. Our hearts go out to all who are in this dire predicament now. Now, I would say that this hurricane and its aftermath represent an existential threat to our society as we know it. People in life-threatening situations of isolation and deprivation mean that unless relief can reach them promptly, and unless the necessary assistance can be found and distributed in an equitable and transparent manner to help them rebuild their lives, Jamaica is going to be facing very difficult times. And I think that point is not lost on anyone who is familiar with what is going on as I speak. In this context, we all need to pull together in unity to get Jamaica through this terrible disaster. This is a time to join hands and hearts, not just in words, but in deeds, so that the whole nation can feel part of responding positively and constructively to this devastating situation and the solutions that will help us to pull ourselves out of it. The opposition must not at this time be seeking to score political points as a political competitor of the government. This is not the time for the opposition to adopt that posture. And we are indeed trying our very best to operate in the spirit of that. On the other hand, we must point out where there are areas of need and what we see as the priorities in relation to those needs, where we see weaknesses in the response mechanisms that need strengthening or correcting, and we must provide, where we can, constructive, well-intentioned suggestions to help navigate the country through this disaster. We must also demand transparency and fairness in the distribution of all relief. The relief must get to those who need it, prioritizing those who need it most, whether they be of whatever political color or whatever demographic group they may belong to. They are all Jamaicans, and they are to be treated equally in this time without any form of discrimination or tribal politics coming into it. And we want to stand for that. There can be no place for partisanship or profiteering by political insiders or others connected to them at a time like this. It requires good governance, inclusive governance, authentic communication, and everyone working together. I now move to some of the things that I wish to propose in this regard. I have proposed to the Prime Minister from last week, Wednesday, that he should establish a broad-based task force to be given the responsibility of governance oversight over the relief effort, the relief coming in, how it is dealt with, how it is distributed, not to manage that process on a day-to-day basis, but to provide oversight to those who are managing it. So there's some accountability for how it's done, and that accountability is being held by a broad-based group that can enjoy the support and confidence of the whole society, especially those who are suffering terribly now and no doubt fear that they may not be treated fairly or they may be ignored or overlooked in the response of the state to the crisis. I also think there needs to be a clear command structure for the actual day-to-day management of the response to the relief. And that should be led, in my opinion, by professionals in disaster management, not by politicians who do not know the ins and outs of responding to a disaster of this magnitude. And we should not be shy of seeking international support and help from persons who have career expertise and experience in this regard. Thirdly, we're going to need a Marshall Plan, a well-funded, broad-based plan for the rebuilding and reconstruction of large swathes of Jamaica which have been ravaged by this hurricane. That plan cannot be developed today, but it is vital that we prepare such a plan and that it have the inputs of persons who have the necessary skills and experience and knowledge to design a comprehensive, workable plan that can be executed efficiently and that can have the confidence of our international partners who we are going to rely on heavily to provide the financial support for this. And in terms of more specific recommendations now, I have asked the Prime Minister to make an additional allocation of resources to members of Parliament so that they can mobilize communities and contractors to help with the cleaning up of communities that are currently in a state of devastation, clearing roads where necessary, cutting trees and the like. Until that allocation is made, members of Parliament are unable to respond to the needs of the people unless they happen to have some personal resources or access to dealing with it outside of the public system, and many do not have that. I would also say that the process of engaging contractors to do that kind of work should be simplified and made easy for members of Parliament, especially in those areas where there's very limited connectivity and where following the normal bureaucratic processes that are required would be very challenging or impossible for members of Parliament. If contractors have a TRN, whatever the allocation is, they should be invoices, and those invoices can be submitted, but the work should be able to begin. Secondly, we note and agree with the decision to suspend the imposition of import duties and import GCT on disaster relief items coming into Jamaica. However, we believe that the period for which this has been announced is too short, because the time it takes to mobilize funding and make the necessary procurement abroad, the logistics, etc., of getting it shipped to points on land where they can then be shipped or flown to Jamaica takes some time. And to have it cut off by the end of this month is too short. And it's also not clear from the announcement that was made whether goods in transit to Jamaica will get the benefit, even if they haven't landed here at the time of the expiry of the window. I'm suggesting that we recast that window in a way which is more realistic, given the situation that we face. I also think we need an evacuation plan urgently for persons who are without shelter. That needs to be well thought through so that persons can be moved to places of safety where whatever form of accommodation can be erected to support them, whether it be tents or something else that can be put in place, and they can have access to the basic means of survival in an organized way. And that is necessary because right now we have people, many, many Jamaicans who are exposed to the elements, including babies, including children, including the elderly, including persons with disabilities, and they need to be moved to accommodation which protects them from the ravages of the elements going forward. Those are my thoughts, and I'm now going to hand over to the next MP who is going to address more specific concerns in their particular constituency. I thank you.